All right, welcome to the latest episode of Blood Money. Today I have two very special guests, Dr. Fleming and Marie Leon. They work together essentially for an organization called 10letters.org, and we'll get into what that's all about. As all the viewers are very well aware, we've covered the whole COVID-19 scandemic quite well on our show, with a lot of frontline doctors coming in to talk about what was really going on. And I think what we're about to discuss takes this to the next level, which is to hold the people that caused this accountable. So, Dr. Fleming, why don't you, introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and what you have been up to.
So, I am a physicist, nuclear cardiologist, attorney. I've been doing that for 55, 38, and 10 years respectively. And in late 2019, early 2020, in January, I turned my attention towards SARS-CoV-2 viruses, which produce the disease COVID-19. And at that time, initially, I was trying to look at how we could best find and diagnose people who were ill and treat those individuals using not only the information behind why viruses cause an inflammation and blood clotting process, or inflammothrombotic disease, which is why people have cancers and strokes and sudden cardiac risk and spontaneous abortions and all the things that we've been saying, but then also used a patented method that I had developed and patented in 2017 to measure what was going on inside people's bodies. And we did that, and we looked at finding out what treatments did and did not work, and what combinations of drugs worked and which combinations didn't. But in the process of running that initial research, I began investigating what we were dealing with, the type of virus we were dealing with, the origins of it, who was involved in the development, where the monies came from, what papers were published, everything that was relevant to understanding the virus. And that led down this dual pathway of not only addressing illnesses that people were having and finding treatments, but more importantly, why we ended up where we ended up in January, February, March of 2020 and thereafter. And it actually dates back several decades with research monies coming out of the federal government, more than half of it coming from the Department of Defense and National Institutes of Health and Health and Human Services, with research monies that went to develop separate viruses that we know are man-made, that were in various labs throughout the world. And the players that were moving that money around and were involved in the research. So people like Anthony Fauci and Collins at NIH, and Peter Daszak at EcoHealth Alliance, and Shi Zheng Li at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, and so many other places. I mean, we're talking about the University of Chicago, Iowa, Nebraska, University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, lots of universities throughout the country that have an involvement, and lots of places around the world, including Fort Detrick, which tried to recruit me early on in this process to come work as a physicist on viruses funded by NIAID. So all of that led into more in-depth connecting the dots of really who's responsible for how we got to where we are today. And there's a lot of people that are very concerned about the consequences of these viruses, of SARS-CoV-2, or what everybody likes to call COVID. That's the disease. Kind of like HIV is the virus and AIDS is the disease. Well, SARS-CoV-2 is the virus and COVID is the disease. And people are concerned about a lot of things, and rightfully so, whether it's social distancing or masking or the shutting down of schools or people not being allowed to get together in their own home. I lived in Los Angeles when this started, and there were electric companies shutting off power to people having family events. And genetic vaccines, something that's very hot and very, very popular. And we know there's been problems as a result, but the real cause of all of this is the virus, because absent this virus having been illegally developed and available to get out of the labs and cause these infections, we wouldn't have had any of the rest of this. There wouldn't have been any social distancing. There wouldn't have been any masking. There wouldn't have been the development or the perpetuation of these genetic vaccines. This was the combination of the perfect storm with parallel pathways, which is part of what I got into at the CSPOA, or the Constitutional Sheriff's Peace Officers Association conference that we were at a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas, where I was explaining that the viruses and the genetic vaccines are parallel pathways that merged together as a result of this pandemic that occurred. And it's not a pandemic that would have occurred had we not been illegally funding and carrying out research. And by we, I mean the United States has been instrumental in it. Many people turned a blind eye to the research that was done. We knew there were problems. Gain of function was shut down for a brief period of time in the 2014 to 2018 era by the Obama administration, but it wasn't Obama who did that on his own. He did that under pressure from scientists and physicians who said, wait a minute, we have viruses that are leaking out of labs, that are man-made, that are dangerous. We have other viruses that are not man-made, like smallpox, that we're finding in vials sitting around on labs that shouldn't be sitting around in labs where anybody can get them. We have the University of Wisconsin and the Netherlands research on avian flu virus, the same viruses we're talking about now, that were undergoing gain of function, illegal activity. We have the evidence that shows that the United States began investing quite heavily in Ukrainian labs, with more than 46 labs identified within a matter of months a year ago, when Russia started walking its way into the Ukraine. These were labs that some of them didn't exist before, but Russia was there building biological weapons. We knew it. They knew it. They knew we knew it. And then when Ukraine separated from the Soviet Union, so that we now had Russia and the Ukraine, the United States went in there and funded laboratories, including mobile labs, to continue that research. And we saw early on in the invasion of the Ukraine, the chaos and efforts that went to cover up our funding. In fact, in November of 2019, and we talk about this in greater detail in the book, is Are We the Next Endangered Species? Bioweapons, Eugenics, and More. We talk about the cover-up, the obstruction of justice by the Department of Defense, because in November 2019, the United States DoD paid $419,511 through Black & Veatch, connected with Metabiota, and need I say Hunter Biden, that they paid that amount of money for Ukrainian labs in November of 2019 to put together a report on COVID. Now, that was 6.5, 7 weeks before anybody heard about anything going on in December of 2019 in the Wuhan market. And today, if you go to the U.S. spending website to look for those spending and funding documents, you will find out that the United States government has wiped those documents off the internet after I've been out there speaking about this and pointing it out to people. So we not only have the original information, but we have the new information that shows a couple of things. The Department of Defense now claims that that funding stopped on the 31st of January 2013 using the exact same grant code numbers. They also identify money going out the door in a similar manner, but for research on and investigations in children. So the Department of Defense has not taken the stance of just, accidentally trying to delete something and saying, whoops, somebody pressed a button here. They have gone so far as to intentionally and knowingly alter data ultra evidence that showed that they were involved in the funding of this type of research before this pandemic ever occurred. So it's our job, my job, and the people that are working with me, like Marie, to help explain in objective, clean-cut evidence that anybody can go find and that a jury will look at and a grand jury will look at, the evidence of these criminal actions of the development of biological weapons by the United States government, including Fort Detrick, including the Department of Defense, which, by the way, is kind of an oxymoron because it's hard to call it a Department of Defense when most of what it does is offensive. I mean, no country ever won a war on defense. We weren't on defense in Vietnam. We weren't on defense in Japan. We weren't on defense in France. We weren't on defense in Germany. It should be called the Department of Offense because it's not just defending the country. It's going out there literally causing problems. And in the book, again, I'm going to point out to you that a lot of this research, both on the biological weapons and on the genetic vaccines, which are a eugenics program, they emanate not only from what was going on in the United States in the 1850s, beginning in the 1850s, but it was stepped up at the end of World War II when a lot of people want to talk about the Nuremberg trials. Well, in the Nuremberg trials, we prosecuted a couple dozen Nazi high officials, scientists, doctors, attorneys. We brought the United States, Russia, France, England, Canada, sorry, Marie, brought over 3,000 Nazis out and incorporated them into our government and our research efforts, including Dr. Bloom, who you need to look at. He was one of the doctors prosecuted at Nuremberg, and it was the U.S. attorneys who got him off. And this man is a man who developed aerosolized vaccines, did genetic research on children, did anthrax on U.S. troops and Russian troops. We got him off. We brought him to the United States and incorporated him into our labs in the U.S., where Operation 63, MK Ultra, and Operation Paperclip, the Russians, Operation Ashrafisham, and a variety of other operations occurred that led to the continued development of biological weapons, the continued use of eugenics programs, which is what the genetic vaccines really do. They alter the genetics of somebody. Classic example being the first one they launched was on sickle cell anemia, the purpose of which sounds really good in theory, to eliminate sickle cell disease, which is great until you realize that what sickle cell disease did, that gene, was allowed people who lived in malaria-infested areas to live and not be killed off. So we are intentionally now deciding that these genes are not of value to humans, and we are going to eliminate them. We're going to eliminate the very thing that made it possible for humans to survive in that area, because we've decided we know what's right and what's wrong. So we have seen the parallel programs of biological weapons, in this case, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and eugenics, in this case, the genetic vaccines, merged together in 2020 to provide the perfect storm that caused all of the loss of liberties, all of the mandates, and the continued experimentation that has been going on. And if we do not solve the problem, the criminal production of biological weapons, we will only be putting Band-Aids on the problem of vaccines, masking, distancing, and mandates.
I have a question. I mean, so are we getting at essentially this is like almost like a Hitler master race thing that's happening here, where these are going to kill off the weaker individuals, hence the stronger, genetically stronger individuals are going to survive. Is that what's happening?
The United States and England started this program in the 1850s. Mm-hmm. It was instrumental to helping to develop the American Medical Association, which took control of how medicine would be practiced and what would be considered important. The Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Foundation, you'll find documents in our book about the Rockefeller Foundation of millions of dollars in the early 1900s spent on controlling medicine and eugenics to eliminate what was undesirable. When we think about Hitler, the typical gut reaction that people have are the Nazi concentration camps and gas chambers. He got the idea of gas chambers from the United States, where we were using gas chambers in our initial eugenics programs. We don't call it that anymore because everybody has decided that's a bad term, so we don't want to talk about it. Hitler, you'll see in the book, took the examples from the Lauglin report, Laughlin, which was a congressional report, and the work that was done by Lauglin and others, and the sterilization laws from Virginia with a Buck v. Bell case that was a Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court ruled that you could sterilize women. And you can look at all the other individuals like Sanger and the people that have been involved in affecting what they consider the appropriate gene pool to have. Hitler took that, he ran with it, and then when the war was over, we went in and got those people, pulled them out, and inserted them into our government, into the Russian government, into Canada, into England, into France, and continued the programs that they were running. Wow. Nuremberg processed 24 people, roughly, and brought thousands of them out without people knowing about it. A good friend of mine, Nora Volkow, she and I both trained together at UT in 89 to 92, both with positron emission tomography or PET imaging. Nora's father was gotten out of Nazi Germany to Brazil. They came after him, one of the good guys, and did away with him. Nora's now at NIH. She is head of brain imaging, PET imaging at NIH. So these people we initiated in the United States and England. The Nazis did nothing more than try to fine-tune it. And when the war was over, we took them out and inserted them into all of our countries, mm-hmm. and used all of what they have learned and incorporated it into our countries and our governments and our CIA and our mm-hmm. FBI and our DOD and our science programs.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, it's like, for those in the know, I mean, it seems like, they try to paint like Hitler to be the worst of the worst, but it seems as though, I don't know, is it our, like, deep state? I mean, it seems like we have a worst of the worst as well, as my point, but who do we identify these people to be? Like, is it the deep state or the intelligence community or the people that run intelligence?
So there are several people that were put in, and some of their names are included in the book. Some of them are not. You'll get a chance to see my training, how I was picked up in the 1960s, thanks to the JFK program. You'll get a chance to see the different programs that have developed along the way. You've undoubtedly heard about some of this, but you haven't had the solid pieces of information to really be able to say, well, it's more than just, a flight of ideas, which, by the way, let's hit the term conspiracy, since this is the one that everybody wants to go to. Conspiracy is not a fantasy term. It doesn't mean a bunch of people running around with loosely connected thoughts. Conspiracy mm-hmm. is a legal term. I'm also an attorney. It's a legal term that was first used by the U.S. government in the 1800s, in the mid-1800s, to go after murderers. Conspiracy means more than one person working together to accomplish something which is illegal.
Hmm.
Mhm. And
Wow.
I
There
think
is, go
I,
ahead,
Wow.
I
Marie.
I think in the face of such an ominous picture, the natural question that comes to most of us who do not live in the rarefied air of Dr. Fleming. And first off, I want to thank Dr. Fleming for his incredible research, because he's made it accessible to normal people such as myself, a professional.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
what do we do?
I
What?
just want to throw in there, like, that was amazing information. Like, that's how yeah, so amazing. Murray, if I could tee you off, essentially, I just want to do a quick little introduction. The issue we've had in terms of citizens that are actually concerned about, what they've done with this vaccine and the death, what a lot of people call the death jab, is that the courts aren't really doing what they're supposed to do. And the way Marie is involved in all this is that there is actually a way for us to have a breakthrough. And so, Marie, the mic is all yours.
Certainly. Thank you for that, Vem. I would like to have nationwide impact. I am here in Nevada, and so that's where I really want to focus my attentions, especially given that Nevada is one of 6 states that allows private citizens to make a direct appeal to have a grand jury hearing of this case. Why is that important? It's important because a normal citizen like me, like yourself, we all know people that have suffered vaccine injury. My mother's one of them. And the question that strikes us, well, first of all, there's anger. There's a whole lot of anger for a lot of us. Many people are not clued in to this, and they value their security, what the government can, what they suppose the government is giving them. They suppose a security, not realizing the contextual picture of what's actually going on here. That none of this was done in defense, the Department of Defense. I laughed at that, Richard. That's really appropriate, because we definitely want to keep these folks on the offense. My job as a regular citizen has been to work with Richard, Dr. Fleming, to find out, how do we cast a vision? How do we cut through the public outrage in a way that we can cast vision with contextual understanding of the vaccines? And I came up, as I'm thinking about this, I like coming up with keywords that help me remember things and remember facts. And the 2 words that I came up with were fruit and root. There is a fruit to these vaccines that we are experiencing on a daily basis. In my case, it was my mother developed a clotting disorder and required immediate surgery and attention, and will be for the rest of her life on anticoagulants and blood pressure medications. So there's the fruit. Many of us have similar stories that we can recount. And yes, it makes me incredibly angry to see her suffer, and to see that for the rest of her life she is going to be having to adapt now to this health situation that was really imposed on her through no understanding of her own. What she thought she was doing was the public narrative, which is, well, we've got to protect one another. Take the jab to protect your community, not realizing that what we were doing is actually quickening the death knell.
It's always something very kind of positive that they try to sell us with everything that they want to do that's corrupt. Hey, we got to be, nice to trans people. And sure, yeah, I want to be nice to trans people. Doesn't mean I want the trans person in the same bathroom as my 10-year-old daughter,
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, yeah, it was framed nicely, right? And played on our humanity, the best parts of our humanity. However, the reality is that was a manipulation, that was mind control. That again springs from the same roots as what Dr. Fleming was referring to happened after World War II. The CIA did a lot of development of mind control programs, and one of those involved our media, and we can see the complicity of the media in this whole process of spreading the message that we had to do our part. We had to protect one another. And God helped those of us that said, no, time out. This doesn't feel right. If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I thank God that I met Dr. Fleming and I was given this information. There was nothing that could stop me from sharing it. And that situation continues. So here I am as an advocate. I'm a professional. I don't have a lot of time, but I'm here to tell people we need your involvement. As one person, we can't do anything. But as we, the people, we have a chance to hold these people accountable. I talked about the fruit. Okay, now I want to talk about the root because it's not just about the vaccines and the vaccine damage that we've seen occur. What we have to do is go back to the root of what caused the SARS-CoV-2 viruses and look at something called gain of function. And Dr. Fleming can pipe in here at any moment. But what I'm trying to do is to contextualize the strategy to go after those that are responsible. The gain of function research was illegal and was a contravention of the Bioweapons Convention Treaty. That's a huge no-no. And I really think while I'm in Nevada, I want to take every opportunity I can to play a role in bringing those responsible for the harm that they did to my mom and other family members to justice. But the way we do that is not by just getting angry. We have to be strategic. So that's where 10 Letters comes into play. 10letters.org is Dr. Fleming worked with those of us on his board. We compiled letters. We have a list of attorney generals from every state. Everything's been done for people, for concerned, angry citizens like myself that don't necessarily have to understand the science to know that something wrong has occurred. We want to equip you to go directly to those in power and let them know that you're mad. Let's be strategic together. That's what my role is here in Vegas. I'm really clear on that. I can't wait to connect with those women that you told me about. This is not just for women. We need mothers, fathers, men, women, teenagers, people that understand the injustice of the illegality of the gain of function research. So I don't want to take up more time because the science.
Could you tell us a little bit about how this works, right? Because a lot of people have heard, okay, we're going to do this and that. I think this is a very different kind of process. If I could just kind of tell a little bit about my knowledge about how it all works, is that ultimately this is about having grand juries, and you need a specific amount of the population to agree to a grand jury. So one of the things that we're talking about early on is, I think White Plains County, which only has a few thousand individuals. So you essentially need 500 or 600 signatures to start a grand jury, which is the beginning of the process of bringing these individuals in justice. I know that was a very kind of layman's explanation. I just kind of wanted to set it up because if I could understand it, I think a lot of people out there could understand it, but please, Mike is yours.
Yeah, there's two things that I was referring to, and forgive me if I wasn't clear. So the first one is 10letters.org. That's what you as citizens can do to make your government hear that you are not at all happy, or nor will you tolerate the gain of function, and that you want to hold those people behind the gain of function research responsible. So that's action one. Action two is what we're doing here, the boots on the ground in Nevada, is I want to connect with like-minded individuals that will make an appeal to the Attorney General within White Plains County. Because of the size of the county, it's much more feasible to try and get, I think it's, Dr. Fleming, did you say 25% of the population signatures are required?
It is. The way that the law in Nevada reads is that if you have 5 registered voters in a county, that will start the process. And we help you with 10letters.org by providing the indictment letter with the references to all the material that a grand jury would need. And then those 5 individuals have I think it's 30 days. It's 1 month, 30 days
Mhm.
to go around their county and collect signatures. And they require 25% of the registered voters in that county. And according to Nevada law, those 5 individuals, when they have that, and they have those 25%, we always tell them, get a few more so that when somebody
Mhm.
tries to knock someone off, you can say, that's fine. We still have 25%. We have 1 in 4.
Right.
Then the courts have to convene a grand jury, which means the people, because that's what a grand jury is. It's the individuals that are registered to vote in those counties that are called in to serve the role of, okay, let's listen to the evidence. Is there enough evidence to suggest that these people, in this case, and we've got them listed out for you, Collins and Fauci and the rest, actually committed the crimes, the the Biological Weapons Convention Treaty, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 18 U.S.C. Section 175, they're all listed. So you don't have to go do the work. You don't have to try to figure it out. It's all listed. When the grand jury looks at that and they say, yes, there's enough evidence here that says these people did in fact break these laws, then these people must go to court. When a grand jury says yes, there is no judge in this country that has the power to say no. The case must be held. The government must come forward with and prosecute these individuals with the evidence. And you not only have myself, you have Dr. Kevin McCarran, who's the world's expert on prion diseases in animals in Japan.
Mhm.
You have Charles Rixey, who is a former U.S. military weapons of mass destruction expert. You have Joanna Deinert, who's a German physician very much involved in viruses, virology. You have Andrew Huff, who worked at EcoHealth Alliance and helped write the grants for the gain of function research. We have other individuals who have provided documents to me, including medical documents of U.S. military special elite forces and their abilities before and after they were vaccinated. We have documents on prescription drugs for in-hospital patients, that those drugs were not given to the patients. They were sold by hospital staff to make a profit instead of treating the COVID patients. We have over 10,000 documents on secured U.S. files. We have the evidence from the original book is COVID-19, a bioweapon, a scientific and forensic investigation. And we will have all the evidence from this book, Are We the Next Endangered Species, Bioweapons, Eugenics, and more. All of that, along with a test deposition that I already gave under oath with a DVD, to be provided for these individuals for a grand jury that lays out the evidence that proves that these people did in fact commit these crimes. And then it goes to court. And when we start to see this happen, and again, the people in Nevada have a unique opportunity. Only 6 states in the country still have laws that allow the people to say, well, if the prosecuting attorneys, the attorney general and the district attorneys won't do it, we the people can. And that's that second part of this, which is getting the signatures to take it to the court, and the court reporter, the person in charge of all the legal documents for the courts in the county of White Pines, has to then say, we have to convene a grand jury. This evidence has to be looked at. And if the grand jury says, yes, there's evidence here, these people will be indicted on crimes that caused everything that you've been experiencing for the last 52 plus months, even though this has been a decades, and in some instances, many decades long process. So for the people that, have talked about, let's have a Nuremberg 2, oh my goodness, no, we don't want another fiasco like Nuremberg 1.
No.
We want a real accounting of these criminals. We want an accounting of the people who lied to us, the people that we pay taxes to provide the facilities and the personnel and the equipment, and put them in positions of responsibility to represent the people of the United States, and yet took an oath to us and then broke that oath, violated that oath, and continued to develop weapons that ultimately has come out and harmed. Well, in the United States, there's more than 1.2 million dead Americans, which are more dead Americans than we've lost in our military since 1776. From the genetic vaccines, the maiming and the injuries are more than 1.5 million more maimed, harmed Americans than we've had in the military since 1776. There are an additional 600,000 excess deaths in the United States that aren't even being called COVID, yet we know that because of the virus, these people had these inflammatory thrombotic, inflammation and blood clotting disorders that I talked about, prion diseases, abnormal proteins causing brain damage like Alzheimer's disease and amyloidosis of the heart and diabetes. More than 600,000 excess deaths above and beyond that, and a guaranteed 42,516 vaccine deaths, which are sadly more deaths than we've lost in every war except the 5 bloodiest the United States has been in. And to put that in comparison for numbers, the next closest vaccine was 53 deaths due to swine flu vaccine, which was pulled off the market, and we went after those people in the 1970s. So this makes everything that has been done before pale in contrast, all because these people spent tens of over 61 million that we've tracked so far, funding weapons to be used. And guess what? They got out. They got out and they killed Americans. They killed people around the world. You have witnessed in some aspect of your life what has happened in the last 54 months. And there's no evidence that this is going quietly into the good night. And you just have to reflect back to President Eisenhower in January of 1963, 3 days before he left office. And he warned everybody of the military-industrial complex that had occurred. And I want you to put yourself for a brief moment in President Eisenhower's shoes. Here was the man who was a commanding general of the Normandy fleet in World War II. He became the military officer in charge of Germany during the Nuremberg time. He then gets elected into office, and the very people that he fought against and tried to protect his troops from, he now had an oath to protect as a part of the U.S. government, watching the same people that were trying to kill his people before, including Blum, who was trying to kill his troops with anthrax, be allowed to do whatever they wanted to under the power and the protection of the United States, all the while producing weapons that placed us all at risk and eventually killed more than 1.2 million Americans.
I want to call out specifically to the percentage of people, and I don't know the exact number, but the percentage of people that committed suicide as a result of this dark period in our history as well. I have a girlfriend whose husband lost his job because of the terrible hit that our economy took, having to shut down for the years that they imposed on us. And that's not an isolated case. So that's it. That deserves important notice.
I want everybody to recognize. So I have my master's is in experimental psychology. Marie, I want you to tell everybody, because you've made a number of solid statements here about psychology and the consequences. I want you to tell everybody what your qualifications are.
I used to work as a therapist. Thank you for asking, marriage and family. And so the implications on the psyche of being cut off from one another, we've all heard the stories, Vem, no doubt you've heard them too, where the elderly were left to die on their own in a hospital setting, and families could only see them from behind glass.
Mm-hmm.
That is just one of, I can't tell you how many stories I've heard like that. The rage that it brings up in me, because of the injustice and the cruelty. And I think if I can bring anything home to people, the impact on our psyches. We've got several things going on here. You've got, for many people, the cognitive dissonance is too difficult to hear the words and the study and the experience of Dr. Fleming and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. They can't believe it. And so often what happens is that those of us that are on the front lines receive lashing out. They receive a lot of hate because we threaten to upset the narrative. We are upsetting it, whether they like it or not. It's coming anyway. But there's a lot of issues surrounding the human psyche right now through this terrible crime against humanity is what it is. And so I think there has to be a sensitivity as we approach the public. There is no shame in having taken the vaccines. Fear was used masterfully to control us, again, playing on our most heartfelt human compassion and loving emotions, protectiveness towards our fellow brothers and sisters. So there is no shame, hostility. And so as we share with people the information that Dr. Fleming has brought to us, I think it's critical that we house it as kindly. I mean, you can't make it kind. It's hideous, actually, at its core. But in our common day-to-day interactions with other people that cannot hear this, we have to be patient. Some people will never hear it. And so essentially, I guess this message is going out to those people that can hear it, that can grasp the nature of what our world is going through, the changes we're going through, and are prepared to take action. But again, remaining kind and thoughtful towards those that are maybe not able to take this leap. And that's the cost of being one of the people that stands up to the injustice. That's the cost. So prepare yourself for that. But gird yourself with the information that Dr. Fleming's made available, because it's incontestable. And he's done such a fabulous job presenting everything from every different angle. And I really encourage you to buy his upcoming book. Can you tell us, Dr. Fleming, when that's expected? So that people can get ready for that, because I think that will help people. Some people can read about something more easily than they can hear it from somebody, because it can be quite a confrontational topic.
Right. So currently it's slated to come out on the 18th of June. And, I'm actually finishing some edits up in between podcasts here. It's a book that's designed to provide you with that overall depth of information, as well as to provide answers and solutions. One of those being the 10letters.org criminal prosecution of these individuals. Another looking at specific ways to address the genetic vaccines in court, but to do it based upon the rulings that the Supreme Court has already held, because there's a lot of misinformation about what the court has said. And speaking as an attorney, it's important that you approach it correctly, or you lose right out of the gate. There's also information about legislation that needs to be available for but an explanation of why it needs to be available, so that the people can actively be involved, and an understanding of all the players and how this happened and what we need to do to once and for all actually put an end to what has been going on, not only as far as biological weapons are concerned, but the eugenics programs that may just change their names so that it's more appealing to people. One of the easiest things to do is to leave things that right out there in front of you, but you just change the name, and suddenly that makes everything acceptable. It's been your attention has been diverted, and to explain to people some of what they need to know psychologically about how this is done, how it's done effectively. And so it's not only an understanding, but it's action plans and a way out of this for everybody. I want people to be able to see things. I don't expect them to completely understand the science, and you don't have to. But everybody here is smart enough. This is the Galileo approach, okay? Galileo got put under house arrest not because he told people that the earth went around the sun, while the Catholic Church told everybody the sun went around the earth. Galileo got put under house arrest because he said, wait a minute. Okay, the average person isn't an astronomer, they're not a scientist, and they're not a theologian. But you know what? If you will just think about things from this point of view, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the stars, look at the planets you can see, and think about it. You may not understand it fully, but you can think about it and appreciate it, and you too could come up with a conclusion very easily that the earth goes around the sun. And more importantly, you don't just have to take the word of somebody else for what's going on. And so I never ask anybody to take my word for it, okay? Because I'm the last person that you'll ever come to and say anything, and I'll just believe you. Because odds are I'm probably going to validate it. So I work under the premise that you should question everything I say, which is why, thanks for reinforcing that. The information in front of you, I want you to be able to see it. I want you to be able to see the work that was done, and you may not understand it scientifically, but I'll bet you can find somebody who does understand it scientifically. And more importantly, for everybody who thinks that the scientists and the medical community are against you right now, there's a lot that regular scientists and regular physicians don't know. And for them to have this information is a wealth of helpful information for all of us, because I've presented my research on treatments and diagnostics of this at medical conferences. I've published multiple papers in research, real research papers, not just opinions. And I've presented at medical conferences, and not a single conference that I've attended and presented at have my medical or science colleagues come up to me and said, well, Fleming, you're just making that up. That's not true, or that's not possible, or we've been told that can't work. To a person, they have all listened, whether it's a presentation or a poster presentation, and their comments have been, wow, well, go look at that. That works. Okay. And they left there with a new understanding. So this book is written for the scientists, the doctors, the lawyers, the lay public, the people who want to be the next Galileo, and for the people who just want to know, and they want to have some sense about what happened, because you hit the nail on the head when you said many of the people who did everything they were told to do because they didn't want to hurt the person down the street or the relative that they had. They were doing that out of the goodness of their heart. And there's nothing nastier for a government or people to do than to take the good parts of our characteristics and qualities and use them against us. We have to, instead of losing those good qualities are also what brings us together in something like 10letters.org, whether it's nationally or in the state of Nevada, to work together to put any differences aside and say, you know what? If there's an ounce of truth in these documents that these people committed these crimes that are responsible for the harm and injury to the people I care about, I owe it to the people I care about to become actively involved and make sure this doesn't happen so somebody else I love or care about doesn't get hurt in the future, or someone else that you love or care about is not another casualty added to the list because I failed to act today.
Yep, yep. And so this is a call to action for the viewers out there. I mean, it's very, people, we get calls all the time, emails, how could we help? And this is one of the ways you could help. I mean, it sounds like a process like this could actually expose so much of what's been happening. Dr. Fleming, what is the ultimate magic spot as far as the results of where this all needs to go?
All right. Well, fortunately, we're going to get more than one magic spot out of the actions that are being placed here in 10letters.org in the book. The first one is to stop the development of these biological weapons, just as we said we would as a country, not only in our treaties, but in our federal laws, including 18 U.S.C. Section 175, the 1989 Anti-Terrorism Act, which covers this. The very things to stop this and to hold these individuals criminally accountable, to allow any of these people to leave office, to continue to benefit from a salary, to continue to live out their lives, and to continue to perpetuate and make more harm is unconscionable. It's inconceivable. We cannot allow Fauci and the others to go free. They have committed crimes that they must be held accountable, or the United States is saying we allow this type of thing to happen, and it gets worse from here. The civil litigation, as far as the genetic vaccines are concerned, is laid out in the book on how this has to be approached to address. And the legislation that needs to be passed, because it's one thing, as I point out in the book, and you've heard other people say, the government isn't supposed to be involved in healthcare, and it's not. But they are. And so it's not good enough that everybody says, well, you can't be involved in healthcare. We have to have it on the record. We have to have federal laws, and it's laid out in the book, put there, that specifically states that the federal government will no longer be involved in healthcare. Medicare and Medicaid is there as an insurance plan, and that's it. From that and nothing else do they have the right constitutionally, and they will write the laws written for them that specifically states or stipulates that they will no longer become actively involved or passively involved in healthcare. In fact, the book goes even further to point out that even the states have limitations upon them, because the 10th Amendment doesn't give all the power to the states if it's not a federal power. The 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is very specific in that it states whatever is not vested, expressly stated in the Constitution as a power of the federal government, belongs to the people and the states. Mm-hmm. The people and the states. It doesn't say the states, it says the people and the states. And the states can only get the power that they have if the people decide to let them have. So if you don't have that power, you can't give it to the state, and the state can't grant it to the federal government. We need this specifically laid out so that there won't be any other questions asked. And by the way, we also hit the World Health Organization Treaty and the international health regulations in this book, because people do not understand limitations of treaties and the importance of treaties. When we signed the World Health Organization, and this is a part of one of those key items that we're going to get accomplished in the book, we did so. The president signed it, and Congress ratified it. And Congress ratified that treaty with some understandings. So there's three things to know: declarations, reservations, understandings. Okay? Mm-hmm. Declaration has no legal meaning. The Declaration of Independence, 2/3 of it comes from the Flemish Declaration of 1581. That's what Thomas Jefferson used. It was a declaration of war. It wasn't an establishment of laws. That was the U.S. Constitution. Declarations have no effect on a treaty. Reservations and understandings do. It means Congress ratified it, went along with it, with the reservation or understanding of certain, whatever they state. That treaty, the World Health Organization treaty and the international health regulations, were done with the expressed understanding and reservations that nothing in that treaty gives power to the UN or anybody else over the United States and the individual states. And it's specifically noted as federalism. It's stated in the understandings, which means under the federalism rule, it belongs to the power of the states. And the states can only exercise the power that the people give them. So we're talking about criminal indictments to put these people away and stop the gain of function. We're talking about providing you with the legal documents and evidence that you need on how to deal with the genetic vaccines. We're talking about addressing the World Health Organization, the International Health Regulation Treaty that everybody's stressed about, and pointing out you don't get to just come in this office as new president. President Biden, if you're listening to me, you might as well get used to my name if you don't already know it. You don't have the constitutional authority to come in and change the treaty. Changes in treaties require president and Congress, and you don't have that. You don't get to come in and write the rules and change the Constitution. And we're going to make sure that Congress doesn't allow you to do it, because Congress has to get up and act. And the fourth thing is the legislation, the laws that need to be passed to take back control of medicine away from the government, to take back control of science away from the government and restore it back to the people, and primarily back to the physicians, because the practice of medicine is one of the oldest professions on the planet. We have the oldest oath of anybody I know of, and nowhere in that oath does it talk about the United States government, anybody's courts, anybody's insurance companies, anybody's big pharma. In fact, the oath that I took is only two groups of people: the people who train me and the people that I accept as patients. I don't know anybody else anything for being a physician or taking an oath. The thing that makes me a doctor is my graduation from medical college and my taking that oath. That's what makes me a physician. All the rest of it is icing on the cake.
Wow, amazing. Amazing. This is such great information, guys. Is there anything we didn't touch upon that's worth mentioning before we wrap it up?
Oh, you never want to ask me a question like that, because that's where I could probably go on forever. But we hit key topics that are critical for people to understand. And I want people to know that this is being presented in a way, in a format that you can understand. That the book has not only the written material, but QR codes that will allow you to go to secured website, where you will look at the slides, and I will either have an audio file, a video file, or both, walking you through the slides. So you take your time. This isn't a speed reading class. This is about depth of understanding. And one thing I've noticed is that the better the book is, the more times you read it, the more you get out of it.
I turned off Marie. For some reason, you're sideways all of a sudden, so that's why I turned you off. But no worries. I really appreciate you guys showing up for the Blood Money podcast. For the viewers out there, please, this is a call to action. You just got to collect signatures, and especially for people in counties like White Plains where you need like 500-600 signatures. I mean, this is the most worthy cause. It's something that, frankly, I've known about for over a year now, and were I not running the America Happens Network, this would be the first thing I'd be doing. But I got to oversee a ton of shows, so I'm hoping some of the folks out there that have the time, that care about what's been happening, actually go out, collect some signatures, follow the directions on 10letters.org. And really appreciate you showing up for the Blood Money podcast. Make sure you go to americahappens.com, insert your email address so you can stay subscribed to our network. Anything we didn't talk about that's worth mentioning, Doctor?
There's one minor thing I just want people to think about. Imagine you live in White Pine County, Nevada. What a lot of people in Washington, D.C., like Anthony Fauci, would consider nowhere. think of the power that you just found out that you have
Yeah.
for what's happened in this country. That a quarter of your population, 600 people, could change the history of the United States and the world for the better. Now that's real power, and it's more power than Anthony Fauci had.
That's actually pretty, I mean, that would be poetic justice. If somewhere that Fauci is, for frankly, just wanting to get rid of your population anyways, is what ultimately takes him down. That would be beautiful. So 10letters.org, everyone. And thank you for showing up for this episode of Blood Money. I will see you all on the next episode.